Before I'm able to start finding equivalent ratios and which trays have the same ratio of cookies to chocolate chips, I first need to write out what my ratios are of cookies to chocolate chips. It's going to be important that I stay consistent in the way that I write this, so I always need to put one first and then the other. So, for example, I'm going to start with cookies every time, and then I'm going to put in the chocolate chips. So, tray one, I see has one cookie, so the ratio is 1 to 4 chips. In tray two, I see two cookies and 5 chips. In tray three, I see 4 cookies and 10 chips. In tray four, I see 1 cookie and 3 chips. In tray five, I'm seeing like half of a chip there, I think. So I'm seeing 1 cookie and I'm seeing 2.5 chips. In tray six, I'm seeing 3 cookies and 12 chips. In tray seven, I'm seeing that there are 1.5 cookies and 6 chips. And in tray eight, I'm seeing that there are 2 cookies and there are 6 chips. Now that I have all the basic ratios written out for each of my trays of cookies, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them each into like their lowest terms or simplest terms. And I see that I've got a couple in there that have decimals, and I kind of want to get rid of that because it's not a very friendly number to work with. So we'll work through one by one, and we'll take a look at whether or not we need to reduce them or not. So in tray one, I had a ratio of 1 cookie to 4 chips, and that's going to stay as is because that would be my lowest terms, 1 to 4. In tray two, again, 2 to 5, I can't reduce that any further unless I'm going to start working with decimal numbers. So I'm going to keep this as 2 to 5. In tray three, I've got 4 to 10. Now, I know off the top of my head that both of those are even numbers and therefore divisible by 2. So if I divide 4 by 2, I'm going to end up with 2. And if I divide 10 by 2, I'm going to end up with 5. So this is also a 2 to 5 ratio. In tray 3, I've got a 1 to 3 ratio, and that's going to be the lowest terms I can get to. In tray 5, I've got a 1 to 2.5. Now, 1 would be like my lowest number of cookies, but I don't really like that I'm working with the 2.5 chips. I mean, who really wants half the chip? So what I'll do is I'm going to get myself to the next friendly whole number of 2.5. So I know if I double 2.5, I'm at 5. So if I'm going to multiply 2.5 by 2, I need to do the same thing over here. And then that means that this equivalent ratio would be 2/5. 3/12, I know that both of these are actually divisible by 3. And so 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. So that's the same ratio as 1/4. I've got this one here. Okay, so I've got 1.5 to 6 chips. So not really friendly to work with the 1.5 idea. What I could do is I can bump this up and I can multiply them both by 2 because that would make my life easier. And I would end up with a 3 to 12 ratio. And then I can divide them easily by 3 because they're both divisible by 3. And I see that this is actually a 1 to 4 ratio for cookies to chips. So that's just one way you can work with your decimals. You can make them larger and then work backwards. If you were more comfortable, you could take that 1.5 and ask yourself, okay, if I wanted to work with a whole, I'm basically finding what the value is of 3 different groups. And if I break 6 apart, I would have 2 in each of those groups. And to have, I would need 4 chips because it would be 1 would be 2 of the groups in the 0.5s. But anyhow, that's a little bit more complicated and more difficult to talk out over, explain everything. All right, so the next one, we've got 2 to 6 chips. So divided by 2 and divide. And so that's going to end up being a ratio of 1 to 3. So now that I've got my most basic ratios here, I can see that I have some similarities. So I'm just going to, I think what I'll do is I will group by color coding. So I'm going to take my yellow and I'm just going to circle. So I've got a 1/4, a 1 to 4, and a 1 to 4 here. And this one ended up being a 1 to 4 as well. So what that means is that tray 1, tray, tray 6, and tray 7 all had equivalent ratios. I'll use my green here because I see I also have some 2 to 5. So tray 2, tray 3, and tray 5 all had a 2 to 5 ratio of their chocolate chips or cookies to chocolate chips. And I'm just going to use my red then. I notice that I have two that had a ratio of 1 to 3. So 1 cookie to 3 chips. So tray 4 and tray 8. So what this tells me is if I wanted the most chocolate chips on my cookie, I would probably want to go with tray 1, 6, or 7 because I get 4 chocolate chips for every cookie that I've got.